All right, well, I am talking today about anarcho-syndicalism, which is basically one form or version of anarchism. And to understand anarcho-syndicalism, I still get confused at times, all the kind of subtle differences between different forms of anarchism. There's like anarcho-communism. I don't know, you could just go kind of on and on, collectivism. And I sometimes have a difficult time understanding the differences, but to understand anarcho-syndicalism is basically the idea that through unions, revolutionary unions, that's the way to bring about socialism. And a good definition of socialism is worker control and ownership of the means of production. Factories, farms, all the things that we need to produce the things that we need to live. So that's a definition of socialism. And there are a lot of different ways you can try to get to socialism. And different socialists will kind of accuse other socialists of not really being socialists because they go about it this way or that way. But there are some, seemingly legitimate different ways you could go about it. One way that you guys are probably very familiar with from coming to RSU meetings is through the apparatus of the party, through a political party. For example, the Bolshevik Party in Russia. They were able to take control of the state and govern the country by means of the Communist Party, take control of the means of production, basically centralize everything under control of the party. So that's one way to do it. And again, some people might say, well, hey, that's not really socialism, but that's not, again, a debate I guess we need to get into now, but that's what some people say. Another way to do it is through parliamentarism. And that's basically by trying to elect socialist candidates to the parliament, trying to elect a socialist president, and enact reforms and changes or moving towards socialism through passing laws and things like that. And that's largely the approach that the Social Democrats took in Germany in the period between World War I and the rise of the Nazi Party. So, according to the anarcho-syndicalist view, rather than trying to implement socialism by way of the party or by way of getting candidates voted into office, the way to do it is instead through trade unions. So let me just go ahead and read a couple passages that will explain things better than I would be able to. This is from a book called Anarcho-Syndicalism by a German fellow named Rudolf Rocker, who I really like this book. I just got it recently, and he's one of the major anarchist historians. So he had a really good knowledge of the anarchist movement as a whole. And anyways, he wrote this book, Anarcho-Syndicalism. That's what I'm going to be reading from. So this quote talks about the purpose of anarcho-syndicalism and what it's trying to accomplish. It says, basically the task of anarcho-syndicalism is freeing labor from all the fetters which economic exploitation has fastened on it, of freeing society from all the institutions and procedure of political power, and of opening the way to an alliance of free groups of men and women based on cooperative labor and a planned administration of the things in the interest of the community. To prepare the toiling masses in city and country for this great goal, and to bind them together as a militant force, is the objective of modern anarcho-syndicalism, and in this its whole purpose is exhausted. And the word syndicalism, or syndicate, is actually another word for trade union. So you can kind of keep that in mind when you hear that word. So part of the role of trade unions, not just anarcho-syndicalist trade unions, but just any trade unions, is to improve the condition of the workers, get better wages, get better working conditions, try to get more of the profit that's produced by the workers coming back to the workers as opposed to going into the pockets of the capitalists. And there are some socialists and even some anarchists who dismiss that as being kind of like a waste of time, a waste of energy to have unions really fighting hard to improve the condition of the workers. But according to the anarcho-syndicalist view, unions are basically, let me actually get the quote here. Oh, here we go. For unions, or according to the anarcho-syndicalist view, the trade union is by no means a mere transitory phenomenon bound up with the duration of capitalist society. It is the germ of the socialist economy of the future, the elementary school of socialism in general. So not only should workers be fighting for better wages, but in addition, that's forming the organization which at some point in the future, when a revolution comes, that will take over the factories, take over production, and allow society to continue to move forward. That's how society will be run, is based off of trade unions. And so these struggles for just better wages, of course it's good just because it ameliorates misery and poverty amongst the workers, but also in the course of struggling against the employers for better wages and better working conditions. This is basically a school of socialism, so to speak, for the workers, teaching them that they need to fight and struggle against capitalism for everything. So that's really important to be in, again, from the anarcho-syndicalist view, to be involved in those type of trade union activities. Here's another quote that kind of explains that point. It says, "The lance head of the labor movement is, therefore, not the political party, but the trade union, toughened by daily combat and permeated by socialist spirit." And here's a little bit longer explanation of that, because this is kind of a really important point. According to the syndicalist view, the trade union, the syndicate, is the unified organization of labor and has for its purpose the defense of the interests of the producers within existing society and the preparing for and the practical carrying out of the reconstruction of social life after the pattern of socialism. It has therefore a double purpose. One, as the fighting organization of the workers against the employers to enforce the demands of the workers for the safeguarding and raising of their standard of living, and two, as the school for the intellectual training of the workers to make them acquainted with the technical management of production and economic life in general, so that when a revolutionary situation arises, they will be capable of taking the socio-economic organism into their own hands and remaking it according to socialist principles. That's another aspect too, is that again, if a revolution were to come, the trade unions would continue, and that's how society would function, is based off these trade unions, as opposed to, for example, in Soviet Russia, the trade unions were either abolished or taken under, or basically came under the control of the Communist Party. The next thing that I want to read over is that there would basically be two different ways in which unions would be organized to, again, carry out the basic functions of society, which is producing what we need to survive and also distributing what people need to live. So there's, on the production side, a method of organization, and on the consumption side, a method of organization. And on the production side, unions in each of the different industries would basically combine to create industrial alliances. So for example, you'd have all of the unions in the oil industry, for example, would form an industrial alliance to basically carry on production of oil in that particular field. Same thing with, say, farming or producing food. Same thing with producing coal. Whatever branch of industry there is, those different trade unions would basically form a federation and democratically get together to plan and decide what needs to be produced, how much needs to be produced. On the other end of things, in terms of the consumption side, You would have unions that are forming like an alliance or a federation based on a geographic area. So, and these unions or this federation of unions based on a geographic area would be the ones responsible for distributing the goods that are produced by these industrial federations, again, to ensure that everyone has what they need, rather than, of course, in a capitalist system where you only get what you're able to purchase, if you're wealthy enough or have the money to buy things. If you don't have that, then you starve or you die due to lack of health care or whatever.